What is up guys, Laneface here, and today we're going to be doing something a little different, which should be obvious because you can see me. But usually when I make videos, I write out a script and then I just record myself reading the script. I feel like it's the most efficient way for me to say everything I want to say. But I tried that with this one and it didn't quite turn out the way I wanted it to. Could be partially because I've been super busy with the whole COVID stuff. It's made my work a lot more hectic. So haven't had a whole lot of time lately, but I really wanted to get this video out. I wanted to do it like right when I beat the game, and that was like 2 months ago. So I'm gonna try it now. Hopefully this works. If it doesn't, I'll just be sure to never do one of these videos again. So anyway, I want to talk about the ending of the Final Fantasy VII Remake. So obviously if you have not got to the end, you don't want any spoilers, you will not want to watch this video. So I want to go back all the way to 2015, actually almost 5 years ago to the day. At E3, we got the announcement, the video, the reveal that the Final Fantasy VII Remake was going to be actually coming. So that was the only time where I allowed myself to think about things that I would actually want in the remake. And that was it. After that, I put it in multiple videos leading up to the remake that I was keeping an open mind. I wasn't going to have any expectations. I was just gonna play the game and then see what I thought after that. But after that first few weeks after they revealed that the remake was coming out, we didn't really have any details. So I allowed myself to think about what would I want in the remake if I had a choice. And some of the things that I wanted was, the better graphics, which is, obvious that was going to happen. I wanted voice acting throughout the whole game with the option to read like text windows like you had in the original. The battle system, I had a feeling just because of the RPGs that had come out in the last few years and just the way RPGs in general are going. They're going to a more action-based type of fighting style, and so I assumed that's what was going to happen with this one, but I was hoping that they would have an option to have it be turn-based. And then the only other things I wanted really was, I wanted, if you beat the game, you would unlock hard mode basically, or like the new threat mod that you can get on PC, where you just play through the game and it's more challenging. There's just harder things to do, so that the original game is pretty easy once you have mastered it. Basically, it's not really much of a challenge. You can just go through and overpower your characters and do whatever you want after that. So I was wanting something a little bit more challenging, and then after you beat that hard mode, you would unlock basically what I call the director's cut. And in this director's cut, the major difference is that Aerith doesn't die. And the reason why I call it the director's cut is because if you're very familiar with the game, you probably know that originally Aerith wasn't supposed to die. I don't know if the creators have actually officially ever come out and said that, but there's tons of evidence supporting that fact. So like for example, if you were to use a Game Shark and revive Aerith after the Forgotten City, when you get to the Icicle Inn, you do the snowboarding mini game and then you crash. If you have Aerith in your party right there, she actually has a line of text that she says when you're crashed in the snow. So I mean, if originally she was going to die at the Forgotten City, why would they give her lines after she died? So that's one instance. She has other lines at the High Wind, and then even the original artwork, she's looking up at the High Wind. When you have that scene, or the part of the game where you go across from one continent to the other on the boat, when you run into Aerith, she says something like, "Oh, did you see the High Wind? It was so big." And then Cloud, you have the option to say something like, "Oh, I'll take you on it someday." And then even at the very end of the game, where you have all the characters together, right before you go down to fight Genova Synthesis, you reach that point of no return. There's a spot with an empty character, like where a character should be, which, you know, should be where Aerith is standing. So there's lots of pieces of evidence that support the fact that she wasn't originally going to die, and that was something they added later in production. So basically in this director's cut, Aerith doesn't die, and then you can see maybe what their original plan was for the game in the first place, what the story was going to be, if there was going to be any huge changes other than her being dead, how would the ending look instead, and then even further, when you get to the end of the game and you go back to Nibelheim, and you can unlock the secret cutscene that shows you and Zack escaping Nibelheim, going on the truck, getting to Midgar, and then you see where Zack dies. What would happen if Zack actually lived there? Even when I was a kid, back in like 2000, just a few years after the game had come out, there was one of the things that was popular back in those days was rumors would go around circling for various video games. And you didn't, back then, the internet was fairly new for most people, and you didn't have, video clips of stuff. It was just kind of word of mouth. And so there was rumors around for a bunch of games, and one of them was Final Fantasy VII, and there was a rumor that you could find Zack in one of the forest areas like you do for Yuffie. And, there's a bunch of random stuff that you had to do in order to unlock it. Obviously it wasn't true. But, people thought that idea was cool, that you could actually play as Zack or see Zack, something like that. So in this director's cut, basically, these characters don't actually die, and you can play as them, and I think it'd be fun to just go through the game being able to play as Aerith. Like, I think it'd be sweet to play as Aerith during the weapon fights, being able to cast Great Gospel and be invincible for, a minute or whatever. Anyway, that's what I wanted. But obviously I was like, that's way too much to ask. That's obviously never going to happen. So I just need to accept what I'm going to get and try and enjoy it as best as I can. So now we fast forward to me playing the game, going through the game, and obviously there's added details. You're in Midgar way much, a lot longer than the original, and so they added a whole bunch of things. But in terms of the storyline was exactly the same. The only difference was the whispers that you would see throughout the playthrough. And at the time, I had no idea why they were there, what they were doing, what their purpose was. But other than that, the actual storyline remained exactly the same, all the way up until you get to the train graveyard. So you leave the train graveyard and you get to the tower, and you know that Barrett, Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, they're all fighting. And so you run over there to help them. Well, then you see Wedge fall from the tower, and he lands on the ground and essentially dies right in front of you in the original game. So once we get to that point, you see Wedge falling from the tower, but he saves himself with the grapple gun. And so originally I was thinking, okay, this game is much more realistic. It makes sense that they're not just going to have him splatter on the ground in front of you. So he's probably just going to die in a different way. And then you go up the tower and you see Biggs and you see Jesse, and they die just the same as they did in the original. And then you escape, and as you're escaping, you see the giant pillar fall down, and you see Wedge trying to grab his cats, and he looks up and he sees this pillar coming down, headed right for him. And so you're thinking, okay, that's how he dies. It's a minor change, but it makes more sense in terms of, the whole grand scheme of, and the realism and stuff like that. So that's fine. But Wedge doesn't die. In fact, we go underground and we save him, and then he keeps appearing throughout the game in random spots. And so the whole time I'm playing after that, I'm like, okay, when is Wedge gonna die? Like, he obviously has to die, so when is that gonna happen? So we keep going forward, and then I'm gonna fast forward all the way to the top of the Shinra Tower, and then we see Barrett looks like he's about to die. And then we start to realize what the Whisper's purpose is in this game. So they end up essentially reviving or saving Barrett, And then we start to realize that these whispers, the whole purpose of them is to control the timeline that's already been created. So we've already played through this timeline, and the whispers are just making sure that everything stays the same. So then we realize, okay, so they're not good, but they're not bad necessarily. They're just keepers of time. So we have a few more instances where in some ways they help us, and then in other ways they don't. And it's just because this is how it played out before, and they're just making sure that it happens. So then we get to the end, and we defeat it was the motor drive, I believe is what it's called. And now we have the opportunity to basically kill these keepers of time. And you notice that it freaks Aerith freaks Aerith out. And it's because she and Sephiroth already know to a point what's going to play out. And if you destroy these timekeepers, then there's nothing to keep us from changing this timeline. And that kind of freaks her out, because after that, she doesn't know what's going to happen in the future. And during this time period, you see these random flashbacks or flash forwards, depending on how you look at it, of things that happened in the original game. And she knows that that's what's going to happen. But with you destroying these timekeepers, then, anything can happen after that. So you go through and you defeat the timekeepers, and then you go into a fight with Sephiroth. And I think that's where the most important line of the entire game takes place. You get to the edge of creation. It's Cloud and Sephiroth. And he says to you, 7 seconds till the end. Time enough for you? Perhaps. But what will you do with it? Let's see. So what does this mean? Well, to me, what I think this means, and I could be totally wrong, but what I think this means is if you go back to the original game, when Aerith dies, Sephiroth is on screen for exactly 7 seconds. And I remember thinking, why is Cloud just standing there? Because him and Aerith are just staring at each other, and then all of a sudden Sephiroth swoops down and kills her, and he just kind of sits there and lets it happen. So I've always like, why did he? And I know he was kind of in his head being all weird and stuff, but if he knows what's coming, he should be able to stop it. And so that's what I think this is referring to, is the 7 seconds that Sephiroth is coming down and is about to kill Aerith. So it just gives me hope that now that the timeline is gone and we can do whatever we want, that Cloud will now have the opportunity to potentially save Aerith. Now on the flip side to that, it also means that any other character could potentially die. We don't know. There could also be alternate timelines or alternate endings depending on how we do certain things. Maybe in one way we could save Aerith, but maybe Tifa dies. Or maybe if we do things differently, maybe Barrett dies. And then of course I'm hoping that there's a way that everyone can be saved. Plus, if you look at part of the ending, you can see where Biggs is in bed and alive. So to me, it just seems like Square is deciding, okay, this is how we had the original game, and the remake, we don't want it to be just, the same thing, just with enhanced graphics and stuff. And again, that's why this is called a remake, not a remaster. They are completely remaking the game, and I think what most people thought is that they're just going to change the visuals and some details and the fighting and stuff, but no one really thought that they might actually change the entire story. And I don't think they're changing the entire story, but I think they're giving us an option of choosing what we want to happen. Core details could change. For example, Aerith living or dying. And that's what makes the upcoming games more exciting to play. because now it's not just going to be about, well, now we're going to, you know, play this stuff over, and, you know, they're going to add a bunch of mini games and stuff and maybe make the game longer. But now it's like, what's going to happen? You know, are we, you know, how are things going to transpire in the future? And we just don't know. And I think that makes the games way more exciting, and at least for me, I really want to play them. And that's what I'm most looking forward to now, is not even just, am I going to like playing the game? I want to know how the story is going to pan out. And for me, it's always been about how the story and how the characters, how I feel as I'm playing as them. You know, I could make a video about the pros and cons of this game. There's certain things that I really, really liked, and there are some things that I didn't like so much. But being able to play as some of my favorite characters in a video game again is what I got most excited for. And now knowing that I'm essentially have the possibility of playing these guys again in a completely different storyline that I've never got to play with them as before, that's what makes me really excited. So I want to know, do you guys feel the same way? Do you feel like the game is going to be more exciting now? Do you think that I'm totally wrong on what the ending means? Do you think it's just going to be the same as it always has? I want to know what you guys think, because I feel like this is going to make some people really happy and then some people really upset. And so I just want to know how many people are more excited now that they could be possibly changing the storyline of Final Fantasy VII, or if they're just annoyed even further that they're changing stuff. So let me know down in the comments what you think. I'll try and respond to as many things as I can. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.